So our cars are about to get more expensive, heavier, and get worse gas mileage. It's the trifecta of great news here at All Cars Reacts with John. Welcome back, y'all. I appreciate you being here. And Automotive News had an article I read this weekend that put a couple pieces of information together that I had not quite considered. And it is that the prices of our vehicles are going to go up, but also the weight of our vehicles are going to be going up. Now, you may dismiss that and say, well, of course it is. They all get bigger. And if you're frustrated like me, that everything seems to get larger and more expensive and heavier at the same time, this time it's because of tariffs. Tariffs are probably going to make our vehicles weigh a little bit more. Substantially? I don't know. But the reason behind it's really fascinating. So let's break this down a little bit. There's generally three big pieces of regulation that dominate designing cars. Of course, you've got the safety standards, you've got emission standards, and you have CAFE, gas mileage standards. And automakers have to balance all this, that they require more safety equipment or more safety rollover protection and crash protection that pushes the weight up. Consumers love bigger, heavier cars. That pushes weight up as well. And as I've covered in videos before, the standards for gas mileage actually reward manufacturers for making vehicles bigger. If you make the footprint of your vehicle bigger, it is easier to meet the gas mileage standards that are set. Now, Trump has come into this and basically thrown a couple of firecrackers in the middle of it. The overturning of the Chevron case has wide-ranging impacts on how much power, say, the EPA has in setting emission standards moving forward. The Trump administration is not going to enforce, they're not going to penalize auto manufacturers for gas mileage standards. But I don't think any of this is going to have a wide-ranging, massive impact on the vehicles we have available to us today. It takes 3 to 5 years and sometimes billions of dollars to develop new platforms and new cars. So they started right now. By the time the car comes out, it's theoretically, Trump only has this administration to go. There's some other administration, and who knows what they're going to do. So they're not going to make a multi-billion-dollar bet that it won't change 3 years from now with a new administration. But automakers can do things right now that are easy to do and then undo. For example, you stop selling the Hemi and the Ram pickup truck, but then you decide to bring it back. They can always just drop it again in the future. But all of these work together to, automakers have to try to reduce how much weight goes up while improving the gas mileage at the same time. And you see a lot of that with our smaller engines that are turbocharged. Of course, you've got hybridization and more exotic materials. How many times in decades, honestly, have you heard automakers say they've increased the amount of high-strength steel that they're using, or aluminum? Then we switch over here, and now we've got tariffs on autos, parts, and materials coming in. So one thing the article said is that industry analysts have looked at it and said the potential impact from tariffs is X number of dollars. You split that up over the cars that are sold, and it's about a $4,600 impact per vehicle. Now, as a consumer who is frustrated with inflation as well as anybody else, when you look at the rising price of everything, and then you look at the rising price of cars, and the fact that for some reason sales are still strong and dealers still don't want to negotiate very much, a $4,600 impact when the average price of a car is nearly $50,000 now, that's a no-go, right? I harp on it, but I look at the Ford Maverick, which I love and would love to have one when they started at $19,000 for a base model, and now they're $27,000 or $28,000 for the base model. About a 30%, 27% increase in 4 years. 5. Automakers understand that most buyers are not ready to absorb $4,600. So they have to walk a tightrope of how much of this do we pass on? And there's multiple things they can do. One is they can let it eat into their profit margin. I think they'll do that in some cases. Part of it they can pass on. In some cases where the parts and the materials are coming from outside the US sources, they can try to source it from inside the US, from American manufacturers. But with our high labor costs, if they can actually find the part, and if it was fairly priced to begin with, it would have probably been bought here anyway. So almost certainly, if they can't find it, they have to pay the tariff on it. Or if they can find a new supplier, it's probably going to be more expensive. So the last thing that this article dove into that honestly had never crossed my mind is that if you don't have to meet fuel economy standards over here, which means you can let the weight do whatever it does, you can buy cheaper materials. Doesn't mean they're going to buy cast iron, but what it does mean is if they're using expensive alloys that they're sourcing from Taiwan or China or Japan, and they can switch over here and use a cheaper material that weighs more, well, if they don't care about the weight of the car anymore, boom. So they can probably offset at least a little bit of the tariff impact by buying a cheaper but heavier material, which is going to drive up the weight of our cars, which inevitably hurts our gas mileage. Ooh, what a tangled web we weave when we start looking into this. And I find it incredibly fascinating because from an automaker's perspective, as I see it, the price is far more important than the weight and the gas mileage. I don't think buyers, consumers care about the weight specifically. If they did, nobody would ever buy an EV. They wouldn't buy an Escalade. They wouldn't buy a Suburban. But I don't think they do. They care about gas mileage. But they only care about gas mileage in kind of an aggregate. What I mean by that is, let's say I'm looking at minivans, and I like the Honda Odyssey, the Kia Carnival, the Chrysler Pacifica. And they each get slightly different gas mileage. Let's say the Honda gets the worst, but we decide we love the Honda. It is the one for us. 1 or 2 miles per gallon different over, say, the Chrysler is not going to matter to us in our decision. Now, what I mean by in aggregate is, let's say you want to get the best gas mileage possible and you've got a 45-minute commute every day. You can buy a Prius or you can buy a Lincoln Navigator. I understand that's a ridiculous comparison, but you're going to be more concerned about the Navigator's gas mileage compared to the Prius, whereas the Navigator versus the Escalade, that difference in gas mileage isn't going to matter to you. So in a world where tariffs come along, they source cheaper but heavier parts, the weight of our vehicles goes up a little bit, nobody's going to care on that 1 mile per gallon difference. So the end result is our vehicles are going to get heavier. The prices are going to go up one way or the other, I believe. Auto manufacturers may absorb some of the tariff for a little while, but not forever. They are beholden to shareholders, not consumers. And all of these decisions, if you think about this, if you think about a car having a suspension component made out of aluminum or an alloy, and you change it to steel, if a new administration comes along and says, well, we're going to do away with this, and you start meeting your fuel economy standards again, it's easy to change back. You have not redone the whole car. So be prepared for our vehicles to get a little heavier and a little worse gas mileage in the near future, thanks to rising prices. What an economy we live in. Thanks so much for being here. Please let me know your thoughts below, but I appreciate you spending more than a few minutes with me here today.